Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, leading behind the scenes. Miranda, welcome again, my co-host.
Thank you so
And
much.
welcome, Adam. Thank
Hi.
you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Adam, you shared an interesting paper napkin with us. Could you read it out loud for everyone listening?
Sure. So my paper napkin says, there is no job description for COO.
So why did you choose that to share with us today?
It was actually from a Harvard Business Review article that I had read at one point, just about the varying sort of job descriptions in people that fill COO or second in command roles for companies, and that they vary widely based on industry, expertise, and sort of what is needed. And there's no real job description that follows for that role.
So Adam, I'm curious, if there's no job description for the role, how do you know when you're actually doing the job right?
So that's the tough part for sure. But I think from my experience and from what I'm hearing, the role is defined and based off of the relationship with the CEO of the company. The way that you perform and the duties and sort of the responsibilities that you have is really based off of what the CEO and sort of the company is looking for to be done or executed on within the company, and what's needed. And so it's really based off of that relationship and that experience level that you have with the CEO of the company to tell whether or not you're doing a good job or whether or not you're ready or fitting for that role.
Talk to me about how that gets built up, because you talked about sort of like almost like this invisible dance that you guys know how to do together between the CEO and COO. But materially, what does that mean? Like, what does it really mean tangibly?
So tangibly, I can speculate for others. I can definitely talk about it in my experience, that it was really just an organic experience between me and my CEO, Anna Birch, of where it built over time. And in the beginning, I was just an employee-employer relationship, just got what needed to get done. And then slowly, from my perspective, built out to where these gaps were in the company, what roles there were, and where gaps were with what she was able to provide as a CEO to the company. And I would begin to fill those in year over year in varying job roles until the job of COO sort of just became apparent. We call it operations director there, but it just became apparent to both of us almost simultaneously that it was a role that she needed filled for a multitude of levels. The article is interesting. It talks about different roles that COOs or that role can take. And for us, it's a lot of sort of an implementer and integrator. We're taking her vision and making it a reality and putting it in on the ground and making it actually happen.
What's interesting is you also suggested that it was this moment where you guys were working together and collaborating that even discovered that the role was necessary.
Yeah, I was in a marketing role for the company and helping interview for 2 or 3 new and replacement positions with the company. And it became so apparent there, I think for both of us, of that's not really a marketer's job description, and what would be a better fit for me within the company, and what would work better for her on a kind of a reliability and ability to say, like, hey, I need you to do this. Because up to that point it was, hey, I need you to do this, and it's kind of outside of your scope and outside your role, but you're able to do it, and you're able to communicate with me on a level that you know what I'm looking for and know what I need.
And Adam, I know your CEO travels an absolute ton, has a lot of things going on outside of the business as well. So talk to me about how that relationship works when, she's not kind of involved as much in the day-to-day of the office, and there's probably a lot of big decisions that I imagine fall to you.
Yeah, that was another large aspect, I think, that sort of grew out of it. It was the company's founded with a husband and wife duo, Anna and Austin Birch. And for years, Austin had been taking a step back, and Anna was taking steps back just on a slower pace. And we had a few folks leaving the company, and there just felt like a little bit of a leadership void at the end of, I think it was 2015 at the time. And that was when this moment happened of, I felt, and I think she felt at that time, that we needed somebody on the ground that was present to lead the group on a day-to-day basis, and not from such a far away view, both physically and kind of mentally for what she was able to supply the company at that point. From there, it grew, and it's part of the joke about the job description. I thought that would be sort of more of what I was doing of filling a leadership gap, but it ended up being much more of the integrator implementer than I even originally expected, where taking much more of her vision and inputting that into the team and making that happen, as opposed to just filling in on leadership levels.
So, just let me ask you a question. How does it look when she's articulating that vision to you? What does that mean to you? Like, what kind of clarity you need to have?
I have these moments that I like to call just these, I have my aha moments when I get what she's talking about. And it usually takes about 1 to 2, maybe 3 conversations. Because she travels so much, our conversations tend to be short and sweet. And we grab the moments that we can communicate. And so it'll be a top level of, hey, I had this idea, I met this person, there was this partnership opportunity. Think about how that would work and get back to me. And then a lot of times I'll then meet or kind of research this next level of what it is I think she's looking for. And then we'll do kind of a follow-up, and I'll say, is this what you meant? Is this where you want to go? She'll supply some advice or some information about it. And then from there, we really get rolling, because at that point, we've both sort of communicated on our own levels of what we're looking for, come to a conclusion on if that's what it is that she actually is looking for the company. And then from there, I can get rolling on the implementation process of it.
Yeah, Adam, I had this note from our conversation earlier where you said that you don't want to be told how to do something. And, I know from my role and experience working with entrepreneurs, I feel the same way, that sort of the how is really our domain. And we want the entrepreneur to give us kind of the why and the what, and sort of inspire us as to why it is that we want to do something and exactly what the vision is. But at least from my experience, I found that when entrepreneurs and leaders get too far down into the how and the details of how something will be executed, that's where there starts to be a little bit of a friction and challenge. Have you observed kind of similar?
We've gotten better about it, yeah, but definitely have had those experiences where, and she'll catch herself, but the CEO will come in and say, there's these 4 things that we could do for this. I really like 1 and 2. And then I'll have to come back and say, that's just what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you want the end goal to be? Let me figure out, let me work with you, let me talk to some people about how we can actually make that a reality. If you are not so concerned about the means, then I'll get you to that end. But it's definitely a balance and an honesty and a communication piece between us of being able to really know what it is that she's looking for at the end of the day, and then her having the trust in me that I might not take the route that she was planning, but I'll get there.
So let's the thing that I love this idea that we've got to, as entrepreneurs, as part of the equation, we needed to share the why, right? The why, the why is this thing so important for us to be done, and the clarity of the vision. But talk to me a little bit, because it feels like to me that that's something that evolved over time in your relationship. It wasn't something that was like, here it is. And there's a lot of thinking that has to be articulated really clearly in one little sort of bucket. Is that not true?
I don't think so. I don't think it has to be a one off the bat. I think, like I said, the ability and where we kind of are in our communication and our ability to work together took years and took a lot of practice. And then it took a few key moments, I think, of trust and realization that if I said I was going to get it done, I was going to get it done, and that she could not stress about, will that happen? And so from there, it turned into, okay, maybe I don't need to supply the what as much. The why is sufficient enough. And it took patience on my end to get there, but also not be, super worried or insulted that maybe she wasn't giving me her full trust right away. I had to give her the ability and earn that trust and respect. Even though I had worked with her, I hadn't worked side by side with her, and I hadn't worked on a level where she was devoting as much trust in her company and her baby, something that she had developed and created for 20 years now. Here she was handing it off to me, and she needed to know that I wasn't going to just run rampant with it, but that I was going to take it and follow her vision and what she needed. And so, no, I don't think it needs to be an immediate, let's lay everything out and just make sure that we're totally. And I think it's a relationship that builds over time. And it just has to be one that works for both people, and that they understand each other.
And so, Adam, you work with Adventure Links, which is an awesome company that does kids summer camp and a lot of corporate bonding programs. I've had the opportunity to go out to your facility in Virginia and play on the ropes course. So much fun.
Yeah.
But in that industry, there's a lot of potential for things to go wrong sometimes. You've got a lot of kids on facility. Things can go sideways. With that high trust relationship, can you give me an example where you and Anna had to really be communicating quickly, working through a challenge or a crisis, where the trust in that relationship was so critical?
Thankfully, the majority of our issues are actually not that unique and fairly common business issues, cash flow, staff, things like that. We've been pretty lucky. But it's I think the principle behind the communication in that high-paced environment, or in the environment where something could go wrong or something's not right, is one very much of trust, is what it really comes down to, where I know that I can tell Anna good news, bad news. It doesn't matter. And she's not going to throw judgment on me. She's not going to scream and yell. She's not going to fire me or threaten to fire me right away. It's going to be a conversation that we can have of, hey, somebody got hurt, or hey, something's not right here, or hey, we missed this form and there's a penalty fee on it. And things like that. And it's a really honest and open communication line. And on her end as well, of, hey, did you do this thing? No, I didn't get to it. I've been traveling. And because of that openness, there's no secrets, and there's no waiting, and there's no fear to communicate something that I might worry she might not like that I did. But instead, I can just tell her open and honestly from the get-go. And it's much easier down the line to fix it or build off of that. Because I wasn't hiding or reluctant to tell her anything from the beginning. And that I think has been really, really great of, if we have staff turnover, that I'm letting her know that, kind of early. One of the quotes was, good news once, bad news early. And that I'm telling her ahead of time, I'm letting her know, and we're not getting into a situation, generally speaking, where there's all this bad news at once because I was secretly trying to fix something that I had done. But rather mistakes are announced and discussed.
And Adam, I really like how you're talking about transparency, like the transparency, the relationship, and the openness. Mm-hmm. And you've said no secrets, I don't know, maybe 20 times already, right? I mean, it's like no secrets, transparency, we just open and honest. And it feels like the way you're describing, especially this open-ended, very loose relationship in terms of structure, it's entirely dependent upon having this transparency. Because it feels like you're saying if the stuff can go wrong, but because we're open and honest, we know that there's nothing behind it.
Right.
We just know it's the stuff.
Right. I think it's multiple layered for us too. We have pretty open financials with our staff, with our leadership team, where we share pretty much everything other than salaries. And it's because of that it's sort of built into the culture that we just want to really be open and honest. I was a peer on our leadership team that was promoted from within. And so it was really, really important for both of us, for both Anna and I, to really be very transparent about what was happening with the team, that we were building something for everyone's benefit, and that there were no secret shady deals going on and things like that can kind of come up from the negative side if you're not open and honest. Just across the board. And from there, that works with the team too, where they will, let me know if something didn't go right, or if they didn't hit a goal or they didn't hit a mark. And it's not a negative thing, but it's a moment of opportunity or collaboration that maybe we can come up with a solution together.
So I love what you were saying about that openness. The trust has always been very important for me with leaders as well. So I'm curious, how do you handle it then within your team if you have someone who reports to you and you feel like maybe that culture hasn't trickled down in the way that you would want to see it, and maybe there's a lack of transparency or someone not being totally honest with you?
I think of it as it's kind of a no tolerance for dishonesty or non-transparency. And I find a lot of times it comes from a misunderstanding of something, somebody not understanding or reading a P&L clearly and not seeing a number right and just being hyper concerned about it. And that just, it's that rumor factory that you kind of want to shut down initially. And it's probably one of our biggest battles to make sure. We have multiple layers of staff, people in different cities. Sometimes people don't see each other for long periods of time. And so it's really easy to let that culture creep in. But we just do everything that we can to stop it. And any questions, it's part of why we have open financials, is just, we want to show that we don't have anything to hide and we're an open group. And that everything that we do is kind of mutually beneficial for all of our departments and all of our areas. It definitely has its way of sliding in. There's a little bit of jealousy factor, if one department gets a budget that the other didn't, that sort of thing. But we really work hard to make sure that everybody feels open to communicate that and then gets the answers that they're looking for.
Let me ask you a question. What about, and we're talking about Anna in this particular case because I know her very well. It's hard to fathom this next question, but what if she's not perfect? What if Anna doesn't show up perfectly every single day? What if there's a bad day and she's feeling the pressure in some other part? Maybe it's, you guys say that you mentioned that she travels a lot and she's on the go a lot.
Yep.
Maybe she's on the go and under the gun somewhere else and doesn't show up in a conversation with you in the way that she normally would, with all things being normal. How does that work out for you? And what's your role? Like, how does that play that out for me? Because you said that you don't like being told how,
right?
But when we feel pressure as entrepreneurial leaders, we tend not to remember the rules we set for ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think out of privacy, I won't go into an exact scenario, but it happens. Absolutely. Where those moments of, responsibilities or there was a letdown. And sometimes it comes from me, sometimes it comes from the staff. On a rare occasion, it comes from Anna and the CEO. It does happen. And it's again, address it as early as we can. Usually we can avoid larger, big deal situations if we can address it early. But it's sometimes it takes that reminder of what is it that we need before we start making rash decisions or judgments and things like that. And then I think relating it back to the COO role or the second in command role, which I fill, there's a little bit of this kind of liaison that you play where you're in between the leaders or the leader of the company and then your leadership team, the folks that are really implementing on a day-to-day basis and making the business run. And sometimes you're part of one team more and sometimes you're kind of part of the other. And sometimes you're just isolated in the middle and you're being tugged and pushed on from either side. And it's this, you don't want to take sides and you don't want to defend somebody if they were wrong, but you want to have their back and make sure that they're not just getting steamrolled because they're out of view of each other. And it's one of the things that was really important for Anna and I when we were developing out the position was that she wouldn't go behind my back and staff wouldn't go behind my back when communicating. If there was something that needed to cross, between my boundary, it would be discussed pretty openly. And so because of that, there's a little bit of a disconnect between our leadership team and our CEO. And that's the gap that I tend to fill and not make either look like the bad guy and try to ease over that rift that can sometimes develop there. And that I think is the biggest important piece. And where I have to put my ego aside and say, she told me what to do. I'm not going to necessarily ignore what she said, but I'm going to try to mitigate that when I bring it to the team and sort of burden that responsibility and let them do their job and hope that it works out.
So Adam, I would tie that back to your napkin. There's no job description for the second in command, and you've just described a lot of different things that are a part of your job. So with that kind of lack of job description and the number of different things that can fall to you, what qualities do you think are most important for someone to be successful in a role that brings a lot of ambiguity and gray area to it?
Adaptability, I think, probably foremost. Just that some days you're getting told what to do, and that you have to, balance that. And other days you've just got work to do. And when I say you're getting told what to do, it's not necessarily by the CEO, it's by the insurance company and by your team and by the state taxes. And just there's that adaptability that on Monday morning you could go in with your to-do list, and within 5 emails, you realize that you're not going to get to touch your to-do list, and that you're going to have to save that for another point. Because it's just, you kind of have to do whatever it takes, and whatever role you need to fill that day is just where you're going to go. And there's always a surprise. There's always something coming around the corner. And I'm always shocked if I didn't get a surprising email in the day, I'm kind of shocked, with the day. And so I think adaptability, and then, trust with your CEO and the team that you've hired, and that you've trained the right people, and they're going to get their job done, and that they'll come to you when they need help, and that you can kind of concentrate on running the business on a larger scale and not get super hyper involved or micromanage them, much like I don't, or other second commands won't want to be micromanaged by their CEOs.
I think that's just really great. And I like one of the pieces of notes that you sent across earlier on. You said something about you can't worry about stepping on toes. And I imagine that means you can't worry about stepping on your CEO toes, the CEO's toes, as much as your team's toes. And you talked about that delicate balance that you have to do somewhere along the way. How important is it for the CEO to admit when they're wrong in order to maintain that trust?
I really think that depends, on the person and how badly they need an I'm sorry apology or something along those lines. I know Anna's busy. I know that she travels a lot. And so if there's something that I was expecting her to get to, if there was a goal that she didn't get to, it's not something that I necessarily need a formal apology of, I messed up. Sometimes I have to give that apology to the team, sort of, hey, this thing that we expected, it's not going to happen from her. The timeline isn't there for it, so somebody else has to take this on. But I could see for some folks that would be important, but for me, that's not as important as just being open with the communication of it's not going to happen. I don't necessarily need the reason why. I just need to know whether or not that's going to be there. And I think that ties in with the stepping on toes, that if I have an opportunity, even though it might cross over with what I expect or think she might be working on, I should take it, because there's a chance that maybe, she doesn't get to it, or that one of our opportunities could pan out differently. And so if you're scared to step on toes or cross the line, I think that's a mistake, and it's probably based off of not communicating clearly enough, where if I did step over the line, it wouldn't be a threat, and it wouldn't be taken or misconstrued in the wrong way from somebody else on the team. It would just be, oh, there was an opportunity there and he took it.
So Adam, I can imagine a lot of entrepreneurs listening to what you just said and describing the way that you have Anna's back, and just kind of drooling and thinking, I want that, because it's not something that everybody has. And so I'm really curious, what did it take, aside from all the years that I know you put in working your way up in the company, to get to that point where, you're willing to take a bullet like that, when to cover for a mistake, to fall on the sword when necessary. Because I think maybe you're taking for granted that all entrepreneurs have someone as good as you, ready to do that.
I think so. It comes at a cost, and it comes at a political collateral cost with the team, where if you, being the COO, are taking the blame and the responsibility for the shortcomings of your CEO on a continual basis, and not showing and covering too much the fact that they're human, that you can lose a little bit of the trust of the team. And that's the flip side of it, of that the CEO loves it and it's great and you've got their back. But if you've got a really well executing team on that next level, and all they're seeing is you defending a CEO that might not be getting their job done or their goals done, that can come at a cost as well. And so that's that borderline there of where you really have to maintain the expectations, and where I'd never want Anna to promise too much, because it ends up hurting both of us with the team. And so that's the flip side. So pros and cons.
Like, and you were talking about drooling over it. I would say differently, or slightly differently, that I think I'm looking around at my team and seeing the similar things that I have, that we're very lucky to have with strong operating people around us, and observing the things that you've latched onto are not the things that I thought I was doing. Like I thought I was doing other things like the clarity of purpose and the very clear visioning, but you fall back on the openness of communication, which is a smaller, much more deliberate act that has to happen every single day, rather than these bigger things that we work about and put up on the walls of the company. So I think that you're talking about building a relationship through these small acts that take time and a desire to make them work. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it works the same in our personal relationships, that they don't come in big sweeping moments, and they don't come with these large gestures or forced moments or anything like that. They come in these little minute details. They come from knowing birthdays, and meals and allergies and some of those personal things that you think are kind of insignificant, but realize that if you know that, you know a lot. And you know quite a bit about that person, and you're starting to communicate with them on a nonverbal level, even at that point, where you're seeing eye to eye, and you know just what's expected before it even has to be said.
And Adam, I totally agree. I mean, my job prior to the Entrepreneurs Organization, I was a scheduler for a member of the Young Presidents Organization who was, managing a huge staff, huge organization. And my favorite moments with him, the ones that really made me want to walk through fire for him, are when he, in the middle of just an absolute crazy slam day, he'd come in my office and just be almost hyperventilating from the intensity of his day, and use my office and talking to me to sit down and calm down for 90 seconds before he had to dive back into all of his appointments. And that meant so much to me, because it sort of showed that, he trusted me and he was being human with me. And then I was kind of the safe space he could go between having to put his public face out to the world. And, he'd say, ask me how I was doing, how was my day? And he would use that time to calm down. And that really just endeared him so much to me and made me want to be better at my job.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to those moments where the good and bad, if I leave a frustrating meeting, again, it's sort of that, where do I fit in within the hierarchy that comes up? But it's one of those, Anna will be one of the first calls that I'll make of, hey, sharing, I need to share my frustrations. I need to vent to you for a minute. And it's not complaining, and it's not necessarily looking for solutions. It's just you're somebody that I can bounce an idea off of, or bounce a situation off of. And when she has a really great meeting, she'll text me, she'll call me and say, hey, this awesome meeting happened. I want to talk to you about it, and walk through and use you as a sounding board for some of the opportunities that I think could come from this. And so, yeah, those moments of communication that, where you look forward to having those conversations to bounce the ideas, or to get that moment of reprieve from the day is essential.
I mean, honestly, for me, that does so much more than, sharing a vision of an organization. I mean, that's important. That helps us get all aligned on where we're going. But to really get to my heart and to make a loyal employee out of me, being human and having a human relationship with your team, I think is so critical to building that trust that lets us all move together quickly.
Right.
That's a great way to end. Our time's up for today. Adam, I think it was a great conversation. I think that the focus on the little things is really what I take out of this. Thanks so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.